What is meant by nationalism? When nationalism becomes more important than religion, when nationalism drives you to oppress others, or to be arrogant, or to humiliate and disrespect those who don't share your nationality, this becomes a major sin. Many countries, unfortunately nowadays, I'm talking about many countries among the Muslims. As for the non-Muslims, it's by default. They say that you have to prioritize your passport, your nationality over your religion. They're kafir. So there's no problem in them saying this because they've reached rock bottom. They're in hell. Who cares what they say? Whatever they say, it's blasphemous. But when you come to some Muslim countries and they say that our nationality, our unity is above Islam, this is where it's an act of apostasy. In this sense, yes, nationalism is prohibited, if not worse. But if nationalism deals with religion, so if your country establishes Sharia and rules by it, defends Islam, calls people to it, honors the religion, then nationalism is defending the country, honoring the country due to what it does to Islam. And this happens only in countries that implement Sharia, that announce and proclaim Islam to be their religion and constitution, and no one else.
Nationalism and tribalism, unfortunately, is a disease that is affecting Muslims all over the world. We should be one ummah, united by the worship of the one true God, Allah. But how did the Muslims get brainwashed into thinking like this? In this video, we will explore just a few of the ways the enemies of Islam divided us in order to maintain control over us and carry out their evil agendas from right under our noses by keeping us distracted with internal disputes. The borders created by Britain, France, and other European powers in the aftermath of World War I have had far-reaching and often devastating consequences for Muslim-majority countries in the Middle East and beyond. These borders were largely drawn through agreements like the Sykes-Picot Agreement in 1916 and subsequent treaties reflecting the colonial ambitions of these European powers. This arbitrary division of territories has been a primary factor contributing to conflicts and disputes in the region. Here's a detailed examination of how these borders have fueled instability. The rise of the Western notion of nationalism in the Ottoman Empire eventually caused the breakdown of the Ottoman millet system, a system in which Muslims, Jews, and Christians can rule themselves under their own laws. The concept of nationhood, which was different from the preceding religious community concept of the millet system, was a key factor in the decline of the Ottoman Empire. The Sykes-Picot Agreement, named after British and French diplomats Mark Sykes and François-Georges Picot, divided the Ottoman Empire's territories into spheres of influence. This created states with diverse populations forced into artificial borders, setting the stage for internal tensions and conflicts. The new borders often separated ethnic and religious groups, leading to minority populations being ruled by different governments and often feeling marginalized. An example is when the British partitioned British India to West Pakistan, India, and East Pakistan. The borders were drawn by Sir Cyril Radcliffe. What he did was clearly intentional. East Pakistan, which is modern-day Bangladesh, have their own languages, culture, and are not Pakistani, so making the region of East Bengal, East Pakistan, is as idiotic as calling England Poland. This was done to divide the Muslims and make them go to war to fight for their identity, which was slowly being removed by enforced policies. Often the newly created states lacked strong institutions and legitimacy among their populations because their borders did not align with existing social structures or identities. This weakness made these states vulnerable to internal strife and external interference. The colonial legacy left a deep-seated mistrust of Western powers among many Muslim communities. The perception that Western powers had divided and weakened the Muslim world for their own gain fueled anti-colonial sentiments and movements. This mistrust continues to influence political attitudes and actions in the regions, contributing to ongoing instability and conflicts. The Maghreb is the western part of the Arab world. The region comprises western and central North Africa, including Algeria, Libya, Mauritania, Morocco, and Tunisia. The Maghreb also includes the disputed territory of Western Sahara. Many people in Algeria and Morocco hold stereotypes and negative perceptions about each other, influenced by historical conflicts and contemporary political narratives. This is despite them being very similar in ethnicity, language, and culture. France keeps its ex-colonies in constant debt. African countries are forced to export their raw products in order to pay their debts and import even the most basic goods. The anti-colonial liberation that culminated in the 60s didn't put an end to European military presence on this continent. On the contrary, the neo-colonial regime of the UK, France, Belgium, and South Africa during the apartheid was enriched in two forms of military aggression. The governments in many of these countries don't reflect what their population demand, often enforcing policies and making decisions to please their former colonizers, like the Moroccan government allowing an Israeli warship to dock and refuel on its way to kill civilians, after the Spanish rejecting them. This caused mass protest across the country, with their people in disgust with the actions of their government. The borders drawn by Britain and France also determined access to valuable resources such as oil. This led to disputes over resource-rich territories and unequal distribution of wealth among states, exacerbating tensions and rivalries. Economic disparities between states created by colonial borders continue to be a source of friction and conflict. The imposition of Western-style nation-states conflicted with the concept of pan-Islamism, which aimed for unity among Muslims across borders. This tension has manifested in various forms of political and ideological conflicts, with some groups seeking to establish transnational Islamic movements or states challenging the sovereignty and stability of existing nation-states. Many contemporary conflicts in the Middle East can be traced back to the artificial borders created by Britain and France. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the civil wars in Syria and Iraq, and ongoing disputes in regions like Kashmir are all influenced by colonial-era divisions and the grievances they have fostered among affected populations. Colonialism in Malaysia and Indonesia significantly shaped their modern histories. Malaysia experienced Portuguese, Dutch, and British colonization, beginning with the Portuguese in Malacca in the 16th century, followed by Dutch control over parts of Sumatra and the British administration of the Malay Peninsula and Borneo. The British brought in Chinese and Indian laborers, impacting the cultural and ethnic diversity of Malaysia. The Dutch exploited Indonesia's rich natural resources and implemented a system of forced labor, contributing to socio-economic disparities and nationalist movements. Both countries eventually gained independence after World War II, but colonial legacies continue to influence their socio-political landscapes today. The Philippines underwent a significant religious transformation from Islam to Catholicism, primarily due to Spanish colonial rule starting in the 16th century. When Ferdinand Magellan arrived in 1521 and claimed the islands for Spain, Catholic missionaries followed, introducing Christianity to the predominantly Muslim regions. Over time, Spanish colonization led to the establishment of Catholic missions, schools, and governance structures that gradually converted many Filipinos to Catholicism. The conversion process was often accompanied by cultural assimilation and the suppression of indigenous beliefs and practices. In conclusion, the borders created by European powers in Muslim-majority countries were drawn without consideration for local realities or the aspirations of the affected populations. This arbitrary division of territories has exacerbated ethnic, religious, and political tensions, leading to persistent instability and conflicts in the region. Addressing these historical grievances and promoting inclusive political arrangements that respect diverse identities and aspirations remains essential for fostering peace and stability in the Middle East and beyond. We need to put an end to this tribal and nationalistic mindset, often influenced by European powers, to keep the Muslims divided and hating each other instead of uniting. We can be proud of our cultures without belittling others. We should be taking examples from our Prophet and not the colonizers which have caused us so much pain.